Welcome. Today, we're diving into an ancient story that has a surprisingly modern message. It's all about a confrontation, a couple of really powerful parables, and a pretty radical rethinking of what it even means to be happy. So let's just kick things off with the big question at the heart of this whole story. It's a tough one, for sure, but sticking with it might just change how you look at your own search for happiness. You'd think a story about the Buddha would start with a nice, peaceful sermon, right? Well, this one doesn't. It starts with a pretty blunt insult during a meeting between the Buddha and a wanderer named Māgaṇḍiya. So Māgaṇḍiya comes across the simple grass mat where the Buddha is staying, and he is genuinely offended. He basically says that this guy, Gautama, is a bunahu, which means a destroyer of growth. He's accusing him of ruining all the good things in life. Okay, so what is this growth that Māgaṇḍiya is so worried about? Well, he's talking about kama, which is all about sensual pleasure. To him, a good life, a full life, is one that's just packed with all the delights our senses can experience. And this is exactly what he's defending. Beautiful things to see, music to hear, great food, all of it. He looks at the Buddha's super simple lifestyle and thinks it's a complete rejection of everything that makes life worth living. He just can't wrap his head around it. But here's where it gets really interesting. The Buddha's response, it is not what you'd expect. He doesn't get defensive, he doesn't argue. Instead, he just completely reframes the whole conversation by telling a bit of his own story. He says to Māgaṇḍiya, "Look, before all this, I was a prince. I had everything. We're talking palaces for every season of the year, surrounded by every kind of luxury you can possibly imagine." He's making it super clear. I know exactly what you're talking about because I lived it to the absolute extreme. And this is the absolute key to the whole thing. The Buddha isn't arguing against happiness, not at all. He's saying he found a better kind of happiness, a deeper, more stable kind of peace that makes all those sensory thrills seem kind of, pale in comparison. This isn't about giving something up, it's about upgrading. So to explain this pretty wild idea, he uses a really powerful, almost shocking analogy. And it brilliantly shows what he means about the deceptive nature of what we often call pleasure. Okay, so he asks Māgaṇḍiya to picture a man with a really terrible skin disease, like leprosy. His whole body is just covered in these painful, open sores. And to get some kind of relief, he stands next to a pit of burning coals, scratching himself and warming his raw skin against the intense heat. Now, in that moment, the leper feels something he might call pleasure. It's relief, right? The searing heat of the fire is so intense that it distracts him from the constant, awful pain of his disease. But is he actually getting better? Nope. He's just mistaking a distraction from a terrible pain for real pleasure. And in reality, he's probably making his condition a whole lot worse. And then the Buddha delivers the punchline. He asks, "Okay, what if a doctor came and totally cured that man? Once he's healthy, once his skin is healed, would he ever want to stand next to that scorching fire pit again? Of course not. He'd realize the fire was always painful. It only seemed pleasant when compared to something even worse." And boom, this is where a 2,500-year-old story feels like it's talking directly to us today. I mean, think about it. Is our constant chase for the next hit of pleasure, binge watching a show, scrolling endlessly on our phones, always buying the next new thing, is that just us warming ourselves by a fire? Are we just trying to distract ourselves from some underlying itch, mistaking temporary relief for real happiness? So the Buddha's made his point about pleasure, and Māgaṇḍiya is listening now. So the conversation takes another step. It shifts from what true happiness feels like to what true health actually is. The Buddha mentions this idea of the highest health, which in the original Pali is ārogya. Māgaṇḍiya immediately jumps in like, "Oh yeah, I know all about that." He pats his own body and says, "Look at me, I'm healthy, I'm happy, this is it." But the Buddha tells him, "Sorry, but you're like a man born blind. You can't actually see what real health is." And to explain what he means, the Buddha tells another story. Imagine a guy blind since birth who's always heard stories about this incredible thing, a perfectly clean, pure white cloth. Then some trickster comes along and hands him a nasty, greasy, filthy rag and says, "Here, this is it. This is that beautiful cloth." The blind man, having no other frame of reference, treasures the sturdy rag. He thinks it's amazing. But then, a doctor comes and cures his blindness. And for the very first time, he sees the disgusting rag for what it is, and he realizes he's been fooled his entire life. And that's the big point, right? Most of us, the Buddha is saying, are just like that blind man. We cling to things, maybe it's fleeting pleasures or just physical health, and we think they're the greatest thing ever simply because we don't have the Aryan eye, the eye of wisdom, to see them for what they really are. At this point, Māgaṇḍiya is just completely humbled. He gets it. He finally sees his own blindness, and he asks the Buddha not just for a lesson, but for a cure. He wants to be able to see for himself. And the Buddha gives him a very clear, very practical path. It's not some magic trick. It's 4 steps. First, hang out with wise people. Second, really listen to the true teaching. Third, don't just listen, actually put it into practice in your life. And finally, if you do those things, you will come to know and see the truth directly, for yourself. And the story ends with this amazing transformation. Māgaṇḍiya, the same guy who started the whole thing by calling the Buddha a destroyer of growth, actually follows this path, and eventually he achieves the ultimate goal, the complete and total peace of nibbāna. He trades that painful, burning fire of craving for a true, lasting well-being. And that brings it all right back to us, doesn't it? This ancient story isn't just a story, it's a mirror. It's asking us to take a hard look at our own lives and ask some tough questions. What are the painful fires that we keep running to for a little bit of temporary relief? And what filthy rags are we cherishing? Maybe just because we haven't yet opened our eyes to see that something so much better is possible.